everybody, and welcome to Paranormal Nation Radio. Not so normal. How's Denise and Ron doing tonight?
I don't know. I'm feeling stalked.
Good.
Nigel's
You
always.
are?
Yeah.
Oh.
Set his alarm.
Right. Hi, Nigel. Thank you
Hey, Nigel.
again for sharing it to your group. And we're doing good.
Oh,
Hi, Susan.
and Mike.
So,
Yeah.
hello,
Good.
everyone. I hope you're all having a good night and that you're warm.
Susan and Mike's having fun in their snow and the ice and freezing cold.
Yeah. Same way up here. And
I'm not going to say a word. I mean, what is it? We had a high of 37.
We were at the beach yesterday.
Yeah, we were. It's 32, feels like 32. So we still can't complain, and we'll be out of this by tomorrow morning.
Yeah, today is going to be our worst day ever. So
right. And Nigel,
cold
you
front
need
finally
to put
hit.
in where your group page is, so everybody can go over and join it. That way, we know where it's being shared to.
Nope, we're all good. It's just staying warm, working. Had to break it to Clover today that she couldn't go swimming. She couldn't go outside and play in the water. But that was about it.
She could have. She wouldn't have stayed out there very long.
But yeah, every meeting today started out with how cold it was this morning. So not good. It was funny listening to everybody and me complaining about cold.
Everybody was saying, anybody got over 20 degrees to start the day off?
Well, we were over 20, but it felt like 17.
Yeah.
So I'll take it.
We were still below zero. We finally broke zero. We're up to 9 degrees right now. Tomorrow we should be up to 28. So maybe I can get all my pipes stalled out by then.
Well,
yeah, it was sunny here. It wasn't bad. Sun pop. It's mostly sunny. I mean, just all the time.
Right.
So it never feels that bad, even if it is colder.
Susan's at 13 right now, so Southern Missouri is just as cold as Northern Missouri is right now.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yep.
There was a couple winters where Springfield had a lot worse winter than we did.
Oh yeah.
They were getting all the snow one year. Yeah.
Kept missing us.
Yep.
Usually it would miss us and hit Omaha though. Omaha would get the really crappy weather and
they always until that.
They can have it all up there,
Oh yeah.
St. Joe, they get a lot of bad stuff.
So
well, that's not far from me now. Remember
I
that.
know. Hey, here's Irene.
Hi, Irene.
Like I got us a guest tonight. I got us a really good one. She's a good friend of mine. Her name is Kat Gash. She's out there in the frozen tundra of Maryland. So she has expertise in all things cat related, as well as she knows a lot about Ireland, Gettysburg, Antietam, all kinds of places. So, and she's also an author. She's written at least one book I can think of. I don't remember if she wrote a second one yet, but I can't wait to talk to her again and see what's going on with her.
Cats are going crazy.
Hello, Kat. Your mic's off.
There it is.
Yeah.
And I still have those white thingies. It looks like I've got cold cream on my face, but or a Plexiderm or something. But I have no idea where that's coming from. I'm going to put my head down.
Well, we can make you an avatar if you want, and then you just hear your voice. But I think you look great.
Oh,
yes, you do.
I appreciate it.
So did you write a second book?
I'm in the process of finishing up the last few stories, and I am soon to have a different publisher. So hopefully by the spring, I'll have my second book out. Most likely what I'll end up doing is taking the first book, which was called My Life Amidst the Paranormal, and incorporating some of the more popular stories from that and putting it in the new book and then just adding some more. Because since that book was written, I've definitely traveled. I've definitely had some additional information, some different investigations, and so forth that I really think needs to be included.
And is the other book out of print now?
Well, I got the rights to my book from the publisher, and so therefore it's currently off the market.
And I'm glad I got one.
Oh.
Good.
So, because I had you sign it for me when we came to Gettysburg.
Mhm.
So, I'm glad you got a new publisher. I'm glad that you're going to be putting out a second book. How's your husband doing?
He's doing fine. As a matter of fact, he just stuck his head in there. That's the reason I looked over. He wasn't quite sure if I was on the air yet or not, and I waved at him to let him know, yep, I'm on the air. So every now and then I might get joined by a cat or so. You saw Loki earlier.
Oh, I'm so shocked.
Yeah. That's
We
nothing
had-
unusual on this show.
Yeah, because there's one back there behind Ron.
Yeah, just before you came on, our 3 started running around acting crazy.
This is Morgana, her tail.
How many do you have now?
10.
I'm not going to complain
Okay.
about my 4.
We've had as many as 14, but that's been some years ago. There were 2 different families with kittens out of each one, but now we're down to 10. She doesn't like it when somebody else gets attention.
Oh, well, that's usually the case. When they hear us talking, it's just like kids. They got to get in.
Yeah, they got to get right up there.
Mm-hmm. And she's
So-
Loki's sister. They're sisters.
So, are you still doing your radio show?
No, that went off the air a couple of years ago. The other host, she decided she wanted to focus more on her mediumship readings and so forth. I was then a co-host on the Paranormal View, which was aired on ParaX Radio for almost 2 years until Henry Foister, the founder and originator of the show, decided that after umpteen years, it was time to retire. So the show went off the air, which I was very sad for, but Henry deserves his retirement.
Oh, yes, everybody does. So, and are you still going out to Gettysburg and Antietam and all those places?
Always. I'm there every time you turn around. And last year, I think it was around in March of last year, I made my very first trip to the Monocacy battlefield in Frederick. I had only gone to like 2 small spots on that battlefield, but I was there with Pat McCormick of the Ghost Soldiers, and he showed me places all over that battlefield that I didn't even know anything about. And some of the experiences that we had while we were there were just absolutely fascinating, including having one Confederate soldier that was insisting on having me help him to find his shoes. He was just so adamant about finding his shoes for some reason. And I kept telling him, I'm sorry, I can't help you. I don't know where they might be. And he finally got aggravated and just left. So, okay, get a dude. If
Well,
that's what you want to do.
Depending upon how late in the fighting it was, another soldier probably took them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because that was one of the things, they wore the soles out on their shoes, and if he had decent shoes, more than likely dead or dying, somebody would have taken them.
Exactly.
Right.
They felt that they needed them more than someone laying on their back did. So I know that happened quite a bit from what I'm told.
Yeah, especially when it came to the Confederates, they wanted shoes and, well, clothing in general so bad that if a fellow soldier had something better than what they did, like you said, it didn't matter if they were dead or dying, they took it. Just as
Right.
it was just as valuable as the firearms.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in the wintertime. I
Mhm.
mean, there was times when I saw some articles that potato sacks, salt bags, things like that were worn on their feet just because that's all that they had.
Mhm.
So
Right.
You make do with
doesn't
what you got.
yep. And I'm going to ask you this question because I asked somebody else this. When you're investigating spirits, what is the oldest, basically back in time, not the oldest as in age, but the oldest as in time, spirit have you come across?
That you've communicated with.
Yeah, because I know you've been to Ireland. I know that you've been all over the East Coast with all this other stuff. So, what time frame have you communicated backwards?
Probably the oldest spirit that I've ever come across was when I was again with Pat McCormick of the Ghost Soldiers at an old fort, an old, I guess you would say, pre-Revolutionary War. And I came across some soldiers there, and one of them was an officer, and apparently he lost his arm during a skirmish, but he lived and continued to serve. But then he ended up in another battle and he died. And it was odd because when I first saw him, I couldn't figure out why he had his arm behind his back. I thought he was, walking rather stodgily with his arm behind his back. And when I was finally able to really focus on him, then I realized it was because he only had one arm. So what they had done was take his sleeve, I suppose, and just tack it on the back of his jacket or whatever, just so that it wouldn't be dangling, and get in
Right.
the way. And I asked him, well, how, if you don't mind my asking you, sir, how did you lose your arm? And at first he didn't want to say anything, like it bothered him to talk about it. And I said, if you lost your arm during a fight or a skirmish or a battle, there's no shame in it. You should be proud that you served, even though you came out with less than whole. And he finally answered and he said, yes, I was shot with a musket and it shattered every bone in his upper arm. So they had to take it off because there was no way they could put it back together again. And that was pretty profound. And I think the next oldest was probably around the turn of the 18th century at an old plantation in Maryland. And there was a slave girl that was there. And she did not like Pat McCormick at all and wanted him to leave and kept telling him and telling me, get it, please, ma'am, get him out of here. Please, I don't want him here. And she actually opened and closed the door to the building we were in. She opened it and closed it to let him know, I want you gone. And he kept telling her and reassuring her, I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to help you. If there's anything at all that we can do to get you to move on, to be with family, be with friends, then we'll do that. And finally, she gave in and said, thank you, ma'am. I do appreciate it, but I'd much rather be here because there's others that I'm looking out for. And I asked her again, well, if you're looking out for them, shouldn't they move on as well? And she says, They ain't got nobody. They ain't got nobody but me.
Mm-hmm.
So we decided to leave it go at that. If she wanted to stay and protect those spirits, we had to honor that and respect it, and just said our goodbyes, and we left. But yes, that Revolutionary War period soldier, that was probably the oldest that I can think of. I'm sure I probably encountered a few that were even older than that during my travels in Ireland and Scotland, but not really sure. I encountered more fairy folk in Ireland than I did spirits. But yeah, that's the oldest.
Okay, so back last week, we talked to a lady that talked about fairies, and her grandmother was a descendant of a fairy.
Right.
What
Her grandmother's actually
fairy
a daughter of a fairy.
Yeah. So, so thinking about that, what size are fairies? Or are they tiny, and then when they get close to humans they get bigger? I don't know. That's why I'm asking. I don't understand.
No, I don't think that there's anything that anyone has ever researched or written about saying that the fae or the fairy or the Sid or the she's, any of them are limited in their size. I think they can appear as just about anything and any size. The few that I encountered the first time that I was in Ireland, especially the one that was a cat that's in my book that you read, I never expected a fae to be a cat, but it turned out to be. And yet I have encountered a few fae
Night, Nigel.
in Scotland that were human size, just normal size, but you could tell that they were not ghosts. They were definitely more ethereal than not. So I don't think, I think it's just because of our culture and everything. You think of leprechauns and fairies and brownies all being these tiny little things that get into stuff and burrow into the ground. And I think that's all just part of the folklore and everything.
Well, that's where I had a teacher, a librarian, way back when in Hawthorne Elementary School, and her big thing was mythology. I still have some fairies and stuff around here of stuff that she made. I don't know exactly where, but I know I saw them when we were moving. So, and everything that she ever talked about was that fairies were, just a little bit bigger than lightning bug or a hummingbird. She always likened them to hummingbirds,
stuff like that. Yeah.
And so I think that's where that misconception comes in, is that's what we were all told when we were young. But the story that our guests told last week, Catherine, it was amazing. Her story that her great grandmother was a fairy, and that she had 2 children with her husband, and it was because he captured her by taking her handkerchief. And as long as he had something of hers, she couldn't leave.
And the way she described the fairies, they were in what we would call formal gown wear.
Okay. It was just interesting to say.
It was an interesting story, because our first question was, have you ever had your DNA checked? Is there part of your DNA that's undetectable because it came from a fairy?
She hasn't, but she does have O negative blood.
Right.
Yeah, that's rare.
Yeah, so does Carl.
I got O negative blood. My brother had O negative blood. All my sisters have A positive.
I don't know what discerns people, human people, from the ethereal world. I think it just has to do with our skin, what we're made up of more than
Yeah.
anything else. Because after all, once we leave this blob of a body,
Meat
we
soup.
continue on in a different, yeah, a meat sickle or whatever that Bruce
Right.
Willis called us. Um, we go on to be something else in a different form. Call it spirit, call it ghost, whatever you want to refer to it as. Energy doesn't die. Matter turns into something else, dust to dust, ashes to ashes, whatever. So for a being such as a fae or a fairy to take on a more human form, why would anybody not consider that a possibility? I mean, geez.
Well, it's also like, are the Fae, are they alien? Are they from the stars? Is it another question we don't know the
No.
answer
Right.
to? Is that the reason why, the way that we see them, we're just kind of shocked and can't seem to form a sentence when the time comes? Because I mean, I've had other people tell me that that they've seen fairies and stuff, and I'm like, okay, explain it to me. That's my thing. I need to know why. I haven't seen Bigfoot, so I have a lot of questions. I haven't seen an alien, so I have a lot of questions. I've never seen a fairy, or I mean, I've seen some guys that look like elves. I can say that.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen any of these other things, so I kind of want to know more. How do we discern who they are?
Well, it was my explanation for the cat fairy that I saw, the first one that I saw in Ireland, after I realized that it was not a normal cat and didn't really quite understand what it could have been. The way it was explained to me by someone was that the fae appeared to me in a form that they knew I would understand and trust and recognize. And I think that's more it than anything else, because as you pointed out, we're conditioned by our culture, our films, our books, and everything else as to the interpretation of what these beings are or what they think they are. Let's face it, when most people think of, or you say the word fairy to a child, the first thing they might think of is Tinkerbell
Mhm.
from Peter Pan. And what
That's
does
what.
she look like? A little human being, but she's got wings like a dragonfly or something. So, after all, if you're going to go out and in search of a fae, the first thing you're going to think of is Tinkerbell. The same way that if you go looking for a leprechaun, you're going to look for a tiny little thing wearing green with little pointy shoes and big ears and everything. It's just what we were taught to believe. And more often than not, that really doesn't turn out to be the case at all.
Right.
We are taught a lot of stereotypes, and I
Mhm.
don't think it's intentional. I think it's just easier to explain that, these are little people, you know, are they people at all?
Yeah.
So, and April has a good question. She goes, do you think the cat with the red eyes that we saw in Idaho was a fairy? How can you tell if a cat is possibly fairy?
I'm Barry.
Well, for me, the one that I saw in Ireland that first time, thinking that it was just a normal cat, it was a tortoiseshell. And if anybody doesn't know what a tortoiseshell is, it's a black cat with the browns and the golds and the yellows and
Mhm.
everything else on it, which is the opposite of a calico, which is white with all the colors. So a
Right.
tortoiseshell is just the opposite. And this cat kept showing up. My sister and I were walking from our bed and breakfast to a restaurant down on the main road, and this cat just kept showing up. And it was showing up on this side of the road. Then it would show up on this side of the road, a couple of houses down in it. Wait a minute. that cat did not walk in front of us. So how in the heck did it get from here to here? And it was always sitting in the same position on, because this town had brick walls separating each property. And it would be sitting on one of these brick walls. And it was so odd that it was sitting there in the same exact position every time I saw it. And anyone who has cats, if you shine a light on their eyes in the dark, they're green. You know, it's the way the eyeballs are made. Well, this particular cat, it glowed kind of blue, which is not normal at all. And then it also changed to a little bit of a purple and maybe a little bit of red, almost like a kaleidoscope was behind its eyes. You know, those old-fashioned kaleidoscope things on old aluminum Christmas trees. That's what it looked like it was happening with this coloration in the eyes. And when I finally got close enough to it, it was letting me know that it was watching out for my sister and I, especially on the road. Because over there, especially at that period of time, there were animals everywhere. And I'm not just talking about in the town, I'm talking about on the side roads, donkeys, sheep, cows, you name it. They were running rampant. So we were told, or I was told, that they were there to watch out for us. And twice we almost got into a wreck because of an animal. But it was interesting that I could feel this cat trying to talk to me, but when I went over to try and touch it, it just disappeared. It didn't jump down, didn't leave. It disappeared. And we didn't see it again after that. And I kept asking my sister, "Do you see that cat over there?" "No." "You see that cat over there?" "No." She never saw it. Just me. Just me. But I did not know that it was a fae. It didn't even occur to me until years later when I was talking to someone and she said, "Oh, you saw a fae." And they were there to let you know they were looking out for you. Fine. But why did they show it to me as a cat? Because that was what you would recognize, what you would feel comfortable with, and what you would trust. Makes sense to me.
April.
Makes sense to me.
Right.
Like this thing right here. This is Mickey.
Hi, Gavin.
Hey, Gavin.
How are you? I hope you're doing good. And I need to have you on again. But I know that you're busy going to school and all that stuff. So reach out, please. So, April, I hope that answers your question. I hope that's what you saw. So, oh, okay. So she says, yeah, her kids saw it and it came in dreams.
Well, that was probably a fae. You know, they do come to you in dreams. This one just came to me in a psychic connection. You know, they can do just about anything.
You can see that. So, so what have you got going on? You said you had some stuff coming up here soon with a prior guest that we had on the show, Big Jim Jones from Catonsville.
Yes, hopefully that'll be happening real soon. He's still in the process of trying to get his stringed instrument business continuing up and running and everything. But he is trying to get a nice investigation for us to go on in this antique bookstore. I've been in that bookstore once before, so when he said something about it, I was like, "Oh yeah, I know that place is haunted. No doubt about it. Can't wait to get in there. Can't wait." And hopefully very soon, Pat McCormick and I will be up and running and doing some more things. His mother had some health problems. But when the weather gets nice, I'm going to be right back out there.
Good. I'm glad to hear it.
Good deal.
And I know if you guys go out and check out Big Jim Jones, he makes cigar box guitars.
Yep.
And so he's big into guitars out there in Catonsville, and he does ship. So check that out. If you need his information, let me know, and I will get it to you. Rex Nielsen bought one of his cigar box guitars and he loves it. So if you're into that, he's a great guy to go to. And if you're into country music, go find out where Gavin Kelly is got his music at, and you can hear that.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's got connections. I mean, within the
Oh, yeah.
paranormal community, a lot of people seem to think that the paranormal community is huge. No, it's a microcosm of little individual communities, and we know each other. We've worked with each other. We have interviewed each other, that sort of thing, and we keep in touch, and we keep it real. So despite what a lot of people seem to think is, oh, well, you've got to know this person, you've got to know that person. No, I don't know everybody that there is to know within the paranormal community. I've
Nope.
been around a few. I've gone to some of these paracons and gotten a few pictures taken, that sort of thing. Some people, I have no clue who they are. So I'm constantly asked, well, do you know this person? Have you worked with this person? No. Yeah, but you're in the paranormal field. Yeah, well, that doesn't mean anything. It's huge. The paranormal field is huge, but we've got smaller families,
Right.
Yeah.
smaller connections.
Well, our niece told us we were nothing because we didn't have what kind of box?
Oh,
A Dybbuk box?
No, she doesn't know what that is at
Oh,
the
good.
time. But it was the same thing as, yes, we are
Yeah,
getting your
Jeff, we
messages, Jeff. Thank you so much for listening. What
Yeah,
is
it
it
was-
called? Oh, a geoport.
a geoport.
Because
One
we
of
didn't
those
have a
things.
geoport.
Oh,
Yeah.
my goodness.
We were nothing, but yet we took her out on an investigation to a graveyard.
Pulled out, yeah, we got the
Pulled
echo
out some-
box out, and she was pretty happy with it.
Yeah.
So we got some results.
And we also put a paranormal
She goes,
shirt
but
on
you
her.
still need a geoport.
I'm like,
Okay.
They sound cool.
$5.
Let's face it, they do sound
They do.
cool.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
But you
So-
can get the same result with, just an ordinary spirit box.
Yeah.
So it depends on what you're accustomed to. Now, me, I cannot use a flashlight communication for anything in the world. Can't do it.
Nope.
But yet I've got a friend
Nope.
that can communicate till the cows come home with a flashlight. And just to tell you a funny story about one of those, I was in a theater in Pennsylvania with some people, and there was a spirit of an actress on the stage, and she did not want me to be on that stage. I mean, she let me know, no, you have got to leave because I'm the diva and I want to be the only one here. So, okay, I'll respect that. I'll back off. But yet there was another member of the company that she liked very much and didn't mind them being there at all. Well, a group of us sat in the middle of the stage with a flashlight, and there was a raised part of the stage for, I think, some tap dancing or something prior to that. So they put the flashlight on this little raised stage. We're all sitting on the regular stage. It's completely black in there. The only thing you can see is the exit signs all over the place. And they were talking to the lady and getting responses. And she would not answer anybody else's questions except for this one person. So they would ask the question and they would repeat it to the lady, and she in turn would answer. Well, I had to get up. My rear end was going to sleep. My knees were starting to ache. I needed to get up. And anybody who's sat on the floor for too long and gotten stiff, you know that it's not easy to just automatically stand up.
Right.
You have to do some contortions and maybe get on your knees or something like that and push yourself up. Well, that's what I did. And when I had to turn around, my rear end was facing that little stage. And that woman turned on the flashlight on my butt. And that was the only thing that anybody could see with that flashlight was my butt. And everybody cracked up. And I'm like, what? And I looked back, and sure enough, she had turned the flashlight on right on my butt just to embarrass me. Of course, I thought it was funny after that too, but the timing couldn't have been better for that. So we got a big laugh at my expense.
Well, it's always interesting to see how other people communicate with spirits. So that was a good example of one wanting to communicate and not wanting to communicate at the same time.
Yeah.
Put you in your place, so huh?
She did. She certainly did.
So,
And that same evening, there was a spirit of a gentleman in the dressing room area, and he insisted that he was going to dance with me, which was fine. I could feel him behind me, and he kind of put his hands on my shoulders, and he was rocking me back and forth to some music and everything. And the next thing I know, his hands were coming down and down. And next thing I know, I'm feeling it along my back and starting to go down a little further. I'm like, whoa, okay, that's it. You're getting a little too friendly here. And so I had to let him know, thank you very much for the dance, sir, but, this has to end. A little later on in the evening, another lady had been in there. And she came out with she was all upset. This ghost just groped me. I thought, oh, okay. Well, it was probably the same one that was dancing with me, but evidently he just went a little too far with her. So sometimes even just those kind of things are very validating, because when they happen to you, that's one thing. But when they happen to somebody else independently of you, almost identical, then well, there's got to be something to it. There's something more to it. So that's always a plus for me when something happens and then it happens to somebody else independent. To me, that's the validation. I don't care if I get EVPs or pictures or anything. It's the experiences of other people that I value.
Yeah.
Right. Now we got a question from Pastor Gary. Paranormal Pastor, how do you explain a tombstone showing up where there is no tombstone?
and this is on film, correct?
I think so. I don't know. He hasn't sent me the video yet and everything.
Is this something he just found?
I'm
recently,
not for sure.
or
He
this
shared
is
it
new
with
to
us.
me.
He shared it with us.
Well, he shared
weeks
that picture of the 3 stick figures.
No, there was something else.
I don't remember that.
Maybe he sent it to me.
Maybe
He
yeah.
might have sent it to you. I haven't seen it.
You. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen anything on a tombstone.
But we have a lot of stuff like this happen at the cemetery down there that he takes care of.
Is that where he's talking about? I wonder.
More than likely, I would
More
say
than likely,
so.
yeah.
Oh, here.
Where'd it show up at?
It's in my. Let me see if I can get this. I don't think you can. So where everything is white and then you have the little gray.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's completely different.
Let me see if I can.
Huh.
Yeah. We have a lot of strange stuff happen at that cemetery.
Let's see if we can get that.
Oh,
see it in there?
Yeah. What the heck?
Yeah. All the rest of them showed up in the background except that one.
Except that one.
Mm-hmm.
A phantom tombstone. That's interesting.
Yeah. And then you go there to where that place is, and there is no tombstone there.
Well, I guess that's no different than my seeing phantom cannons and things like that on battlefields. It's not so much, I guess, it might just have something to do with the energy of the area.
Oh, there's a lot of energy down there.
A memory that someone has that's passed on and they associate it. And so therefore their own memories manifest. I don't
could be
know.
that. It could also be that at one time there was a tombstone
Yeah,
like that in that location that's now gone.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just a time, a rip in time where you can
Right.
see it.
Did you guys check with the dowsing rods to see if it's a, or if there is a grave there? In
Yeah,
that spot?
we've checked there.
Yeah.
And Tom, yeah,
We're not saying there isn't.
there's probably a grave there, but that headstone is not there.
And yeah, Tom, we did all have fun at a theater.
Egyptian theater.
So it's been a long time at this point
Seemed
since
like
we've
it.
seen Tom.
Yeah, it was fun.
So,
Yeah, this cemetery down there that we're talking about has a history from Indians, cavalry, the Mormon Wars, and Civil War, all combined together in one spot.
Yeah, that's a lot of memory. It's a lot of
Yeah.
memory.
I mean, even the sheriff's department have seen soldiers on horseback out there. They said they won't ever go back down that road again.
Mm.
Yeah.
luckily, there's nothing between that where the beginning of the cemetery is and the end of the cemetery is that they have to go to, and they got other ways that they can get there.
Right. The only one that goes out there is the game warden trying to catch that guy that's baiting the deer to shoot him.
Oh. Oh.
Yeah.
I figured that's what they're using that corn for at Walmart. All that deer corn.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
See, that's one thing I got to tell you, Kat. It's weird down here. The birds are fat. The squirrels are fatter. We have, my daughter lives in a place called Thousand Oaks. We have probably a good 1,000 oaks around here. We have oak trees dropping nuts every day. I mean, all the time. So we don't have any starving animals here. Okay.
Take care,
And you
Randall.
know how they are up there where you live and where Carl lives. They spend 6-7 months gathering all these nuts. These squirrels don't care. They just stop, sit, and eat and go off on their way. They never take any nuts with them.
No. Don't have to.
My goodness.
And I do not feel bad not feeding the birds because
No.
there's more than enough crap for them to eat.
Yeah, they might scratch under the snow and
But-
ice for food.
But
so.
here's what's funny. Yesterday, when we went to the beach, I know everybody's going to hit me. This lady was taking food out for the seagulls. And I'm like,
She's called a tourist.
Okay.
no, she lives there.
Oh, no.
Yeah, she
Well,
lives
she
there.
just enjoys the company then.
Oh, the thing is those damn birds just shit everywhere. I mean, I tell you, every time I've been shit on by a bird, it's been a seagull. So
That's what you get for being at the beach.
That's right.
Instead of like up
Um,
here, we've got this huge park, the Hagerstown City Park, and we have geese, ducks, and swans, and a few others, and the sidewalk, the network of sidewalks all through there.
Oh, yeah.
It's nothing but crap. So
Yeah,
you
they
really
poop
have to
every
be very
15 minutes.
careful where you step.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it's a sanctuary for them. You know, they come through here migratory, that sort of thing.
Yep.
So if you
Yep.
want to enjoy the park, you just have to enjoy the poop.
yeah,
That's right.
Twice a year.
yep, we had that.
Canadian geese where the
Where
lake
we,
I walked around, it was covered twice a year.
yeah, we don't have that now. We have cats apparently on his walk now. They're not allowed to feed them.
Bears, alligators.
No,
Snakes.
you
Bigfoot,
can keep the
maybe.
gators. You can keep the gators. The bears, we've got a few bears up here. We've got fox and coyotes and everything else.
Yeah.
We have
But
those
you
two.
can keep the gators. No, keep the gators.
Last night, our son-in-law got dive bombed by a owl.
We've got those up
Oh,
here.
crap.
I knew they were here, but yeah, our bigger problem, somebody asked me today, did we get a frozen, watch for falling iguana warnings?
Oh,
And I was
those
like-
things. Yeah.
And I said, no, I said, we do have lizards, but they're so little that if they hit you, you're just going to go, what in the heck was that? I said, I'd be more concerned about the tree frogs. I said, I spend more time getting irritated with them because they climb on our windows and then
Oh,
poop
yeah.
on our windowsills. outside. So
Mm-hmm.
we finally figured out what all the poop was. I kept going, what in the heck is this? Frog poop. So that's what we got to live with. But like I said, you know, we sit there, and I know how much you love the animals and feeding them and all that. Here, it would be stupid to feed them. You know, they've got so much other stuff to eat.
Yeah.
So, I
And
mean,
we
I'm
like to do it
talking,
up here.
You feed them
Yeah.
once, they
Yeah, I
come
did
back.
too.
what?
I
Yeah,
said
they
you
do
feed
come
them
back.
once, they come back.
Yeah, they knew where to.
So-
Well, I've got a fish
yeah.
pond on my front
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
porch,
Mhm.
and I've got 5 goldfish in there. They're but that long. They're huge.
Yeah.
And I finally had to take the pond out of the ground some years back because the owls and the hawks and everything were constantly getting into the pond and eating my fish. And it got to be too much trouble stringing the lines and everything for the pump and the UV light and everything. So I ended up bringing a smaller pond onto my front porch and enclosing it with bricks. So
Mhm.
it's right there as part of my porch at the moment. And I couldn't figure out why in the world the pond water kept getting so low, especially in the summertime. And I thought, well, evaporation is not going to cause it to get that low.
Right.
Until one day I noticed that the deer were coming into my yard, and if there was no water in the bird bath, they were coming over and drinking out of my pond.
Nice cool water.
So
And
every
filtered it
time I
back.
turned around, I was filling up my pond. And a few nights ago, I'm sitting on the couch. My husband had already gone off to bed. A few cats were on the cat trees right in front of my big bow window. And all of a sudden, the one cat starts growling and everything. And I hear this clunk, clunk, clunk on the concrete, and creep to the front door and look out the little window there. It's a damn deer drinking out of my pond. So, okay. Well, they need water too. So
Yeah.
as long as they didn't try to chew on the fish, I guess I'm good to go.
Well, I don't think they eat fish. but-
No, but you know,
No, they don't.
no.
Yeah, we have these really neat. We have red, gray, and black squirrels. So it's kind of neat to see them. So
I haven't
And
seen
I
a black
had-
squirrel in
cat.
years.
Yeah, back in Kansas City, we had I had some doves that I fed, and if I was late feeding them, they would let me know. They'd get up on the wires, and they would sit there and yeah, when they saw me out there on the deck, they'd
Why
start
not?
screaming at me.
and it seemed
Mhm.
like they would follow us too, because if we went somewhere else, all of a sudden you'd hear doves complaining at him, and we wouldn't even be near our house. We'd be out, you know,
Yep.
in Atchison or
And I mean, I no
Leavenworth
sooner
or
get
whatever.
put their food out there, and no sooner get inside the door, and man, there they are. They're right there.
Boy.
Eating.
Talk about surveillance. Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing I'm
Mhm.
feeding here now is hummingbirds starting in March.
Mm.
Only because they do come through here, and some dumb person kept telling me, well, if you keep feeding them, they'll never leave. And I'm like, no, they will. It's just
Yeah.
it's instinct. They're
They
gonna
will.
go
They'll get
where
up
they're
here
going.
Yeah, they'll
eventually.
just head on.
Yeah.
So I had never seen them as, you know, as much as I saw them here. And I told him, I said, I need to get a new thing so I can put it closer to the window, because I sit here in this spot all day long, okay, for my job. So I want to put it right outside the windows to where I can see them.
Yeah.
So, but did you
Nature's
know?
a fun thing to watch.
Oh yeah, did you know that there are actually hummingbirds in Las Vegas? They look like sand. They're the same color as sand.
Really?
Yeah.
Nobody's seen them.
Yeah, I
And
happened
they
to
stay
see them
there.
when we
They
were.
stay there year round, or do they migrate too?
I think they migrate too, because I saw them in
Wow.
April.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's probably too hot in the summer.
Yeah, it's probably too hot. They probably go up to Oregon or Washington or even just northern Nevada.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I happened to see them when we were at a hotel once, and they were just going from flower to flower. So it's a random random crap that we don't all know about. So, but,
Well, animals to me, they definitely have souls. And there was a question that had been posed to me once about going to heaven. And I said, well, I don't know if I'm going to get there anyway, but if there is one and my animals, all the ones that I've known and loved over the years, if they're not there waiting for me, I'm not going. I'll go somewhere else. I'll find another way to be around animals because to me, heaven is not a paradise if my animals aren't there. I don't care how many of my relatives are there. My pets have been just as much a part of my life. And so why shouldn't they be a part of my afterlife?
Exactly.
So that's the way I see it. It's not paradise without my pets.
so your pets aren't trying to kill you every time you try to walk?
No, but they
I know.
are going to get killed if they keep jumping on my stomach and my guts and everything else at 5:30 in the morning because, like an idiot, I forget to fill up their crunchy bowls before I go to bed.
Yep. That's your reminder.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
I
And
know.
my one cat, he'll go over to the food bucket and he will literally knock the lid off of it.
Yeah.
And he'll knock it around the room and I can
At
hear it.
5:30.
Yeah. And
Yep.
my husband will tell me, "Did you forget to fill up the crunchy bowls?" Yes,
Yep.
I did. And I'll go in there and there might be 2 or 3 in the bottom of the bowl and that's it. So I have to fill them all the way up. But yeah, if they don't kill me, I'm going to end up wringing a neck for doing something like that because I'm trying to get to sleep or
Mhm.
wanting to get back to sleep after going to the bathroom. And they're like, "Nope, you're already awake. Time to get up. 5:30. I don't care. I'm
Yeah.
hungry."
If I forget to feed ours at night before I go to bed, it's about 5:30 is when I get the reminder.
Yep.
I start scratching on the walls. They'll start walking on my head,
Mhm.
walk on my chest, and sit there.
Yep.
And then make noise.
And they don't bother me.
Doing that now.
Oh,
And
they don't bother my husband. It's just me because they know that I'm their meal ticket. So
Yeah,
they bother
that's what
me.
I am.
They
Yeah.
don't realize that I'm cleaning
She
up that.
doesn't feed them.
I clean up the meal ticket, you know,
They never bother her for food. Never.
but they let me know when they want their litter box cleaned.
Yep.
Yeah.
I get the shit end of a lot of deals, I swear. But one of the funny things with these cats is, you go to the doctor's office and they go, "Are you safe in your house?" I said, "No." And they go, "From what?" And I said, "These cats," I said, "they keep darting in front of me. They're trying to kill me." I said, "They don't realize who buys their food."
Well, I consider my cats almost my alarm clock, and there's sometimes that I actually rely on a few of my cats to let me know when there's a spirit passing through because I might not
Mhm.
necessarily pick it up, but my cats know they're there.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And I've had one ever since COVID. I've had this one male that comes through and he would just walk through the house and he would bother the cats, with his presence and everything. Finally, I just had to let him know, look, I don't care that you're here. Half the time you don't want to talk to me, but we've got to set some ground rules. First of all, you're not going to mess with me or my husband while we're sleeping. The bedroom is off limits, and so are the 2 bathrooms. The rest of the house, we're good to go. And yet, unfortunately, he's gotten in a very bad habit of calling out my name in my husband's voice.
Mm.
And I have gotten up from the sofa to go and check on my husband, who had a stroke back in 2016. And so I'm attuned to every little noise, that he might be getting ready to fall or, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So when I hear him calling me, I immediately get up to go check on him. Well, I'm laying there on the sofa watching TV and he calls out. So I immediately get up. My husband's sound asleep, actually. He was snoring. And a little while later, it happens again. And I get up and I go check on him. And finally it happened maybe another week or so later. And I got angry. And I got up from the sofa and I stood there and I said, look, blank, blank, you have to knock this stuff off. You want my attention, you can get it in other ways. But when you start mimicking my husband's voice and you think it's funny that I'm having to get up to check on him, no, if you don't stop this, I might not be able to get rid of you, but I know people that can. So you better behave yourself. And he stopped. But then another few weeks later, my husband is sitting right there on the sofa with me. And he heard it too. And he looked at me and he said, what the blank was that? And I said, that's that knothead. And my husband got mad at him and he blew up at him, saying, no, we're not going to play that crap. You're not going to do this. Because if anything does happen to me, she's going to think I'm crying wolf, and not going to come. Well, I told my husband, no, that isn't true. I'm still going to get up and check. Doesn't make any difference. It's just that it wasn't right.
Right.
And so he hasn't done it for a while. But, sometimes you just can't get through to them. I don't know if they get bored. And I don't know. But it was awful. But he still sticks around every now and then. He'll walk through the house and I'll see my cats look up, and they'll literally watch him as he's walking past. And my husband sees him out of the corner of his eye, kind of like as a moving shadow, so to speak.
Do you know who it is?
Have no idea. He won't tell me who he is.
No idea. Maybe he used to live there.
No, my husband's aunt and uncle built the house. They were the only other occupants. No, he won't tell me who he is. I've asked him, and he'll just say, well, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
What time frame does he look like he's from?
50s, 60s. Like I said, he started arriving during COVID. So I don't know
Maybe
if he
it was boredom. Ran out of people to mess with.
I guess.
Could have.
I don't know. Just like I have a spirit of a Marine that showed up, I guess maybe it's been 8-9 years ago now. And for the longest time, he wouldn't even tell me who he was. I only saw him dressed in hippies style clothing. Longer hair, bell bottoms, the kind of shirt that has the white collar and the beads and everything else. And he wouldn't tell me what his name was, but he would always arrive when I was listening to my friend Rock with the Shock, Steve Shockley, who's on Friday nights playing baby boomer music. And finally, this young man kept asking me for songs. He says, can you make a request? Yeah, sure. Can you have him play this? And he'll come up with songs that I hadn't heard in years. And a few of them I never really even heard of, like from the 50s or the early 60s. And I would ask the Shock to play these. And he's like, Kat, where are you coming up with these? And I finally had to tell him, it's because I've got a ghost here that's asking for requests. And finally, one afternoon, I was playing music for myself on the computer, and this spirit came by. And I said, are you ever going to tell me what your name is and where you came from? And the only thing that he would say to me before he disappeared that time was, hoorah! Okay, you were a Marine. Yes. And gradually over some weeks, he was finally able to open up to me and let me know that he was killed in the Mekong Delta in 1969. But he still wouldn't tell me his name. And the Shock looked up for me in fold 3 of various different things from the military and found out that there was only certain units of Marines still stationed in that area in 1969. and he came up with the last few Marines that were killed in that area. And one by one, he read off some names, the shock did. And the next time the spirit showed up, I asked him, and he finally admitted to me who he was, and his name was Peter. And as soon as I said his name, he got very quiet for a while. He was still there. He usually stays to my left, behind my left shoulder. And he got very quiet. He was listening to the music, and sometimes he'll dance and he'll boogie away, but he didn't do that. So I knew he was being very quiet. Then after the shock show was over with, he says, "You're not going to contact my family, are you?" I'm like, "No, Peter, why would I do that?" He says, "Because I've had others to say, well, you want me to call your family, let them know you're around or in contact?" I said, "No, Peter, that's not for me to do. That's not the kind of person I am. I don't interfere with that sort of thing. Even if you were to ask me to find your family, no, that's not what I do." And so he was very content with that, and he said, "Thank you." He says, "Because I wouldn't have liked it if you tried to contact my family." I said, "No, don't worry, I won't."
And how would you explain that to his family anyway?
Yeah.
Exactly. But I'm sure that there probably would have been other mediums out there that would have been compelled to try and contact them or say,
Now,
"Hey,"
maybe not compelled,
or
but at
just felt
least
responsible to. Yeah.
I don't know. There's some mediums out there, and we know some really good mediums. I know we do, but there are some mediums out there that do anything for attention.
Yeah.
Right.
And
And
I had
money.
told, so I told it that I'm not like that. That's not me. That's not what I do. It's not who I am. And it took about 3 years before he finally ended up showing himself to me in his uniform. And because up until then, it was always in the same kind of clothes and everything. And he said that that's what he looked like before he joined the Marines. And he finally showed himself to me in his dress uniform. I'm talking dress to the nines, the beautiful blue pants and the white jacket. The blue jacket, the white pants, and the starched hat, and all of his ribbons and everything else. And I felt so honored that he was able to share that with me. That was very profound. It still is. Probably the most profound spirit that I've ever encountered was that he felt that I was safe enough to show himself to me in a way that he was proud of.
Right.
So
How does your husband feel about all this?
well, he's not exactly a non-believer. He's a Bigfoot believer, but he knows that I've been doing this since he's met me, since 1970. But as far as actually seeing them and everything, like I said, he sees this one out of the corner of his eye all the time. He knows he's around sometimes. But to know that I can communicate and everything, as far as my husband is concerned, he knows what my ethics are, my purpose. So he goes along with that.
Hi, Tammy
But
Lee.
he told me straight up years ago that he would never want to go on it to an investigation. And I said, "Why?" He says, "Well, it's one thing to hear about it all. It's another thing to experience it." I'm like,
That's the fun part.
He's got a good point. He's got a good point.
Yeah. You can leave the spirits where you have them. That's fine.
Well, that was the reason why you came to Gettysburg to see us, and he stayed at home.
Yeah. Well, there were an awful lot of things that he just really wouldn't want to experience. Like he said, if he had to sit in a dark room for any length of time, instead of having an EVP from a spirit, all you'd hear is the whole time. He'd be sound asleep in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
A marching band could go through the room. He'd never wake up. So you could, hey, there's a ghost in the room. Huh? What? Oh, okay. Let me know when they're gone. He'd be back.
There could be a train going through our room and he wouldn't wake up.
Yeah, same way. So he's very patient, very tolerant with me. He knows it's something that I enjoy doing. So that's probably why we've been married for as long as we have. He
That's
puts
right.
up with me.
And how long have you been married?
Let me see. We got married in 1977, so that would make it. Oh heck! What's my math
46.
here?
Gets calculated.
46. Yeah. My goodness. Can't even think straight
Congratulations.
anymore. The brain's getting muddled here. Okay, this is 2024 minus
Annie's already did the
1977.
math. She said 46. She said you're right.
Yep, 47. It'll be 47. 47 in June.
Our 40th is coming up in May.
Goodness. Well, we met in 1970, got married in 1977. So I've known him almost my whole life.
And Tammy Lee was born in 77.
That's how she did the math so easy.
I was getting out of high school in 77.
I graduated in
Still in high school.
73.
I was 12.
Mm,
As a sophomore.
young squirt.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
So, and when we got married, I was only 15.
We?
Yeah, right.
I was trying to make myself
What do you mean?
making myself.
He had to look real quick.
I was 18 when
Maybe
we
on
got
your,
married.
maybe on your first one, maybe, but not
Yeah.
the second.
No, when we got married, I was 18. When I got married the first time, yes, I was 15.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, the state of Maryland lets you get married at 15. Who'd have thunk?
Mm-hmm.
But it is what it is. But
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I mean, when I think about the fact that I've been married that long, and sometimes I don't even feel like I'm that old to be married that long. So
Oh, wait till you get to be my age.
we're not that far apart. So, but so you've got some stuff coming up with your friend at the bookstore and stuff. You said that you had some really profound experiences with him. Did we talk about that on the show or before the show? Do you remember, Carl?
Before the show.
Okay. Let's talk about those experiences that you had at with your friend, your mentor there that you're hanging out with. Tell us about that. You also had an experience with Big Jim Jones. Did we talk about that on the show, or was that before the show?
That was before the show.
Okay, so let's talk about those two things.
Okay. Well, Big Jim and I met, oh goodness, I guess it's been close to 15 years, something like that I met him. And I went on my very first investigation with him at it's now some sort of a factory in Baltimore. And watching him do what now Jim is a big dude, as you well know. He's tall, he's big. He's not the sort of person that you would really look at as being a paranormal investigator. He's like a big teddy bear, so to speak, but I wouldn't want to mess with him. And going through this factory, just being next to him, his energy is so precise. He's very focused. And not too many people are like that. There's a lot of investigators where they'll just go into a location and just let whatever happen. They don't really think about it. It's just, okay, whatever happens, no big deal. Jim is a very focused investigator. I guess being a police officer, that's pretty much what he would do.
Yep.
But just being around him has a very calming effect. And we could hear footsteps. We could hear breathing. we could feel somebody next to us. And he and I, we didn't even have to say what we were hearing or seeing or feeling. I could just look up at him because I'm this little dude. I could look up at him and he would look down at me and he would look at me and go like this. Are you seeing this? Are you hearing this? Yeah. So we were able to communicate so well during all of this. And we were at the Jonathan Hager house a few years back. And even though it was during the day, didn't matter because the spirits are there no matter what. We're going through the house and the floor, it's a 2-story house, but the second floor is made out of these humongous thick beams. It's very old. So to hear somebody walking across that floor when you're downstairs is, you really can't unless they've got heavy shoes on or something clomping around. And we're downstairs. The docent was allowing us to just walk wherever we wanted to. And we're downstairs and we hear the footsteps above us. And the first thing he did was go to the base of the stairs and look up. And my first reaction is to go up the stairs to see what's up there. And we had another lady with us, and she was like, "What are you going upstairs for?" I'm like, "Well, that's where the action is."
Yeah.
If something's going on,
While you're there,
you go there.
Right.
So I went up the stairs as quietly as I could because Jim, there was no way he could go up the stairs quiet. So I went up the stairs as quiet as I could. And then the next thing I know, I hear Jim saying, "It's in the room above me," which is like another room over. I get to the top of the stairs and there is the shadow of a female walking across the floor. And even though you really wouldn't be able to hear the footsteps, Jim is downstairs telling me he could hear her walking around. And then after we left the Hager house, here in our city park, some years back, some philanthropist around here purchased a section of the steel girder from one of the trade centers. And it was erected in our park. So after we finished at the Hager house, I showed them where this monument was. And we're all standing around and Jim had his recorder and everything. And later on, as we went back to the parking lot and he turned on his recorder, you could hear voices. And there really wasn't anybody else around. It was just the three of us standing right there. And all the other people were in the park, way out of earshot. And you could hear them. And I told him that years before, when I had been in the park and had my EVP going, it was actually the most chilling thing that I've ever heard in my life. When I played back my recording, you heard what sounded like an airplane making a nosedive. That screaming sound that you hear like on TVs and things like that when an airplane is making a steep dive. And you could hear people yelling. And I kept thinking, what am I picking up? What am I picking up here? Because I was still on the grounds of the Hager house, which is literally right across the railroad tracks. But this is what I was picking up. And so when Jim got this same thing, I went back and a couple of days later listened to it. And I realized that I caught the memory of one of those airplanes making a steep dive. or turning or doing something, and I'm hearing these people yelling, and it had to have been coming off of that monument. And I told Jim about it, and it gave him chills. And Jim is an emotional dude, and he said he had tears in his eyes and everything else, just thinking about it. I can just barely go near that monument now. I'll go past it, and I might take a small flower or something like that, put it on there, but I can't even get close to it anymore. It has such residual energy to it. And for somebody like myself, it just gets to me. I can't get near it.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I mean, every one of us has a memory of that day, that month, that year that sticks with us and will stick with us for the rest of our life.
Yeah, indeed.
So, I mean, like I said, I remember where I was and what I was doing. It's the same as, when people found out that Kennedy died or Elvis died, depending upon how they saw stuff.
Right.
Elvis is dead.
At least he went home. He stopped. Huh. He stopped getting a lot of attention.
Yeah, he left the building.
So, but
my friend Pat, he has the ability to help spirits to cross over. I never really thought much about that. I never really knew anybody that knew how to do it or, was capable of doing it. I just knew that there were some people that had that ability. So when I started investigating with Pat, having him do this, especially with soldiers, he was in the Air Force, so he can relate to them. At least, being in the service. And we were at the David Stewart farm in Gettysburg. And that was a Confederate field hospital during and after the war. And the entire grounds of this farm had tents. And they did operations and everything else in the barn as well as in the house. And we were there at night. There was a number of other people there, but Pat and I just went off just by ourselves. And never having experienced anything like crossing spirits over, I didn't know what to expect. And most of the time, Pat really doesn't see much. He can feel it, but he doesn't really see. So he kind of relied on me to let him know if there was somebody around. Well, we get to the edge of the property. We're literally walking across the field, and it had been mowed down. The crop was already gone. And he has his voice recorder going on. And we're walking through, and I'm like, oh, man, what's that smell? And then I recognized that it smelled like something had died. Probably a hawk or something had got a hold of something and, killed it out in the field. But it's really smelled bad. And I said, oh, man, what is that smell? And he could tell that something went off on his recorder, and he played it back. And as soon as I said, oh, what is that smell? You hear a very distinct voice saying, dead animal. Like, well, didn't you know it was a dead animal? Dead animal. And the closer we got to the property line, there was a line of trees, which probably was not there during the war. Kept seeing these little red dots cropping up here and there. And Pat was like, what is that? That's not fireflies. I said, Pat, that's cigarettes. They're smoking cigarettes. Because a cigarette, it gets real bright when you inhale, and then it goes back to normal. And then it'll flare up again when you take another puff. And it was happening, in the same exact spot in a couple of different places. So the pickets were out there and they were smoking cigarettes. And I told Pat that there was one, what looked like an officer that was right there, apparently, out there inspecting or whatever. So Pat stood there and he said, sir, if there is anyone here that would like to cross over? I know that you've passed on. I know you probably died either on the property or maybe, during the battle and you came back to be with some of your comrades. If you'd like to cross over, I can help you to do that. And I said, I asked him, well, Pat, what do you want me to do? And he says, well, I'm going to open a portal and I want you to let me know where these spirits are in, proximity to this portal. Let me know who goes in, how many, and so on and so forth. Well, I didn't want to get too awfully close to him while this was happening, not knowing what was going to go on. So I was maybe 20 feet away from him. And he said a prayer. And he said a few other things. And he said that this portal was opening. Suddenly, it was almost like, well, you know what it feels like to put your finger in a socket, get zzz, and your whole body just kind of stays that way for a moment, like that tingly sort of feeling. Yep. Well, all of a sudden my whole body felt like that. And I looking around to see, well, am I stepping on an underground wire or something? What the heck is going on? And then I look over at Pat and there's this strange glow that's opening up on his left side. And I couldn't figure out what it was at first. And then I realized that this was whatever he was trying to open. So I definitely kept my distance. And he was talking to this one officer that was there, having him to direct whoever it was that was with him. They were welcome to go into this portal to be with their family and their loved ones and everything else. Then suddenly I look to the rear of me and the field kind of went up on a rise and then went back down toward the farmhouse. And over top of the rise of that hill, all of these soldiers were coming down over the hill. And they were headed toward this light that Pat had opened. And by the time he finished, I would say maybe 20 went in. And before he closed it and everything, he yelled over to me. He says, well, how many do you figure Pat crossed over? I said, about 20. And he says, well, did the officer go? And I said, no, he didn't. He says, well, so he spoke to the officer and he said, well, sir, you can go through. You can go through if you want to. And he's like, no, I'm good. I'm not with his men. So when there wasn't any other spirits that were headed toward that light, Pat said another prayer, and then he closed it, and then he said another prayer, and it disappeared, completely went away, and that feeling of sticking my finger in the plug, that went away. So when he was finished, his entire face had changed. Just prior to that, Pat's face had, well, not exactly stoic, but after he did this, he had this almost smile on his face. He was very at peace, sort of thing. And I felt good about it. I mean, I'm not a religious person, but if what Pat did worked, that was fine. That was the first time that it happened with Pat. But then probably the one that it was a little bit funny, but it was kind of sad at the same time. We were at Antietam at the Bloody Lane, and he was trying to get the soldiers from the Irish Brigade to cross over. So we were there with Henry Foister and a few others from the Paranormal View. And myself and another medium were to tell Pat who was crossing over and so forth. So he opens the portal and he says, anybody that wants to go through, please do so. The other medium yells out, hey, Pat, there's a farmer down here that's got his mule that wants to go. Can he cross over with the mule? And Pat said, sure. If he wants to take his mule with him, sure, go right ahead. So this one goes through, and the next thing I know, I'm hearing this, hey, wait for me, wait up, wait up. I look behind me, and here's a Confederate soldier beating feet down the hill, saying he wants to go. So here he comes down, and he goes through. And Pat is still calling out to the Irish Brigade, go ahead and come on in. Please come into the portal. By the time everything was finished and he closed the portal, Pat looks at me in the other meeting and he says, how many you figure you went through? And I said, me personally, as far as I could see, maybe 12, 15. And the other medium kind of confirmed it. And Pat's like, wait a minute. There were hundreds of these guys that were killed here. And you're saying only 12 or so went through? And I didn't think anything of it for the longest time until one day when I was talking to Pat, I said, you know something? These guys are Irish, right? Predominantly. Yeah. New York, that sort of thing. New York Irish. What are Irish in religion for the most part? Catholic.
Mhm.
Pat, are you Catholic? No. Are you an ordained minister? No. I said, well, if I were a soldier and Catholic, the first thing that would be going through my mind is, who the heck does this guy think he is that has the ability to get me to cross into heaven? Because I'm standing right there watching these soldiers leaning on their guns or leaning on a tree or just sitting on the ground going, and not paying any attention to him. And duh, it's because they were predominantly Catholic and just did not relate at all to what he was trying to do. So Pat said next time he decides to do that down at Antietam, he was going to take a Catholic with him and see if he can't try it. And I said, hey, you've got to do what relates.
Mm-hmm.
Just because they're in spirit doesn't mean that they don't have any common sense. So they're not going to follow somebody like that. But
They got to follow whatever belief they have.
Yeah,
whether
exactly.
it's Baptist, Christian, Presbyterian, whatever.
It never occurred to him until I mentioned it.
Well, see, a lot of people think that their religion, my religion is going to help them. And it's not. It's the religion of the person who passed that makes the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're not going to believe. I mean, if they don't believe that sage is going to clear everything out, they're not going anywhere. I mean, if they're not Native American, they don't give a crap.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say. I mean, people want to believe that sage works for everything.
They don't.
It does. It does work for some things, like sanitizing your air. Makes it cleaner. Even though I don't like the smell, but that's a whole different ballgame. Rumble on Rumble, Blue Tree Skystar asks if you're a Dead Files fan.
Can I do a no comment?
Yeah.
Sure. Why
Yeah.
not?
You can say whatever you want.
No comment.
Because that's
My
your
comment
opinion.
is I like Amy. I think that she's interesting to hear how she
The
reads
new one
it.
or the old one?
And we were supposed to meet Cindy, and she had moved on to another location by the time we got there.
Yeah.
She seems really nice. I just don't know how you train to be a medium. That's the only question I have for her. I don't know how you train.
And Blue Tree agreed with Kat.
Yeah.
No comment.
I mean, I only watched maybe a half a dozen of them with the first medium and stopped.
Yeah.
When Cindy was with
Dave
Schrader, and also when she had sometimes been with Jack Osborne,
Right.
I enjoyed watching her and so forth. There was something about her, about Cindy, that I can relate to because there are some locations that she would go into that all of a sudden she would get this certain look on her face. So you could tell that she was tuning in.
Surprise.
And I've had so many people to tell me that I do the exact same thing. If I'm at a location and I pick up on something, my one friend would say, "Well, Kat's doing it again." I'm like, "What? What are you talking about?" That look.
A surprise look.
Well, no, she says it's like I suddenly phase out, that I'm not there, that I'm somewhere else for a few moments. She
Yeah.
says, "Yep, she's gone. She's picking up on something." There's that look, and
Yeah, we kind of
I
get
didn't
a
know that.
lost. You kind of get like a what some people might say like a lost look in your eye
Yeah.
because you're
Surprised. And then
because
they're
you're
like,
kind of somewhere else.
Yeah, and I didn't
So
know it. I had no clue.
yes, and Tammy, that's
Oh, yeah.
true. We have friends that would say
Yeah.
every time would say something about the faces that she makes, and
On Amy, yeah.
yeah, and so like I said, I like listening to what she had to say. It was interesting. But knowing that Amy really didn't know where she was going, because I've interviewed Steve a couple times,
Mhm.
and they don't know where they're going. They had to eventually get Amy to the point where they were telling her what climate to dress for or to
Right.
pack for, because she was packing for all 4 seasons every time she went anywhere. And you can't do that. That's a waste of time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did think it was funny though that they kept her ex-husband on the show when she
Right.
left. But I always thought it was odd that her ex-husband was working with her on the show. So he seems like a good guy. Matt seems like a good guy. But
I
I
stopped
don't know.
watching a lot of those
Okay,
shows
Gary,
a
have a
long
good
time
night.
ago. I watch some of them just for the locations. That's
Right.
it.
Right.
The
And
history of them and some of the things that go on. Sometimes I watch them just so that I can have a good laugh. And then there's other times that I will watch things and some of the history behind the location is what will pique my curiosity. And, my husband will say, "Would you like to go to that place and do this?" Yeah, I'd love to go to some of these places. I mean, incredible location. Now, there's only 2 places that I will never go to, even if somebody were to give me the money to travel and so forth. I will not go into the Velasquez Axe Murder House. No, there's no way that I would ever go into that location.
even with somebody who's possibly related, that's related to the sheriff.
No, no, I would not be able to go in there. There's, I can, my stomach about half churns up, even considering the possibility. The other one is quite possibly the Lizzie Borden house. There's just something about that particular type of hauntings that, while I know how to shield myself, those kind of things really get under my skin, and it would really begin to bother me. Like there's one room at Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum that I can't go into. Every time I've ever been there, I can't go into it, and that's the one where this one guy was murdered with a bed.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. I wouldn't be able
Yeah,
to.
I remember
No,
that.
I wouldn't be able to go in that room.
No, I can go down the hallway, but I have to stop right there at the door of that room. Can't go in there. I can't go in there. So yeah, the shows can be interesting. Sometimes they can be humorous, but
yeah.
very informative sometimes. Very informative. Now, I think probably the one show that my husband actually really enjoyed was watching Expedition X. And they were at this one fort, and they caught a person walking across in front of a wall. And the cameraman saw it while he was, at base station. And he called him in and said, "Hey, you've got to see this." And the look on Tori's face, he's looking at Phil Torrey's, he's looking at it, and he's a skeptic,
Right.
big time. And
Yep.
he looked at, and the look on that man's face when he saw that. And then another time they were at this one hospital called Eloise.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's the one we're just watching.
Yep.
And there was a person sitting behind Jess, and he tried to dismiss it by saying, "Oh, well, it's just something on the lens. It was a shadow." But they showed all the other photos before and after, and it only showed up that one time.
Mm-hmm.
And his mouth dropped open. And my husband gets tickled at that. And he says, "You like it when that stuff happens to him, don't you?" And I said, "Yeah." Because there's times when you, as an investigator, you go into a location with a few people that are convinced that there's nothing there, that nothing is going to happen. And yet when something does happen to them, they totally freak out. And I keep thinking, well, why are you even here? If
Right.
you didn't come here to experience something, why bother?
Well, I can tell you, that's how I'm going to be the first time I experience, if I ever get to experience a UFO or a Bigfoot. I'm going out there. I'm trying to see if something's out there. Not that I necessarily believe that Bigfoot exists, but I know that we're not the only life form out here. Okay, that I know. But Bigfoot, I don't know. I don't have any reason to believe that it exists.
Yeah.
So, but
I'm on
I
the
still
fence.
go out there and look.
Yeah,
Like I said,
I'm on the fence with that one. My husband is convinced that there is. I'm
I
on the
haven't
fence.
seen good enough evidence.
Yeah.
I mean, not good enough. There's some out there, but it's not definitive.
No. This one episode that we were watching on one show where a group of people, I think it was an entire family, they had all gotten all slopped up on moonshine and everything and claimed that there were all these critters that were surrounding the house and they were shooting at them and they had every gun you could possibly imagine,
I
just
remember
blowing
that.
up the woods and everything. And I'm thinking, well, first of all, as soon as you said they were all hopped up on moonshine, sorry,
Yep.
Yep.
anything is
They
going to
can
set them
see
off.
anything then.
Yep.
And
right.
as soon as
And-
one person sees something, everybody's going to freak out.
Yeah. And what if it was bad moonshine and that's the reason why they were seeing shit?
Yeah, like bathtub
Yeah.
gin. Yeah, during
Yeah.
Prohibition, you can get a hold of a bad batch of that stuff
Hey,
and cause you to
My
go.
dad,
Yeah.
my dad was killed by a drunk that was drinking bathtub gin in downtown Baltimore. So
Ooh.
it happens. Long story. We're not going to get into it.
Yeah.
But Tammy says her grandma was chased by a UFO. Government came to talk to her the next day and she told no one. And it took her just a few years ago before she would even talk about it. So
Right.
You get scared enough or you get threatened enough, yeah.
oh yeah.
I've no doubt that there are beings out there. Where they come from, if they come from an alternate dimension, if they come through a wormhole, I don't know where they come from, but there's other beings out there. There's no way in the world that we could be the only intelligent beings. There's just no way. No way possible.
That's
what
the way
do you
we
think about in the news
Can't be
down
that.
there in Miami or over there in
Excuse me.
Afghanistan, Iraq on the jellyfish UFO, APU, whatever you want to call it.
UAP.
UAP. I was getting
Yeah,
they got too many
UAPs,
letters
get
in
them
all this
right.
crap.
They're not UFOs anymore.
I know.
UFO, UAP, who gives a crap what they're called? We still don't know what in the heck they are.
Yep.
So at
Yeah,
least the
there's-
Yeah,
average
that
person does.
the jellyfish one there, I don't know.
They look an awful lot like the UFO things in the original black and white version of
of
the
the
Orson
Worlds.
Welles War of the Worlds.
Yeah,
To me,
they
that's
look a
what
lot
they
like
reminded me
things that
of.
were in
Yeah.
Star Wars. That's
Yeah,
why I'm
those two.
saying it could be AI generated.
That's the thing. There's
Yeah.
so many things that people do these days to trick other people.
Yeah.
And then, you know, and AI is people tricking people. I think people need to understand that. It's not a computer just going out there and doing this. It's you. Somebody's telling the computer to do this to you. So keep that in mind. It makes Photoshop look like child's play.
Yeah.
Is what it does.
Yeah,
So,
there's a lot of technology out there that are just now coming to light to the general public.
oh yeah, and this stuff's been going on for
Mhm.
years. I mean, hell, you live by one of the places that, you know, a lot of the science fiction stuff has been investigated out there in Aberdeen. The
Yep.
Aberdeen Proving
Proving
Grounds.
Ground. Yeah.
Right.
And people don't realize how much stuff was brought back there from World War I and World War II that is right there in the middle of basically Baltimore area
Yeah.
that you can get to right off the bay. Actually, there's parts of the bay you can't even go into
Yeah.
because of Aberdeen Proving Ground owns it all. So, you know, so don't be surprised. And if you want to find out more about that, hey, our friend Frank J. Bennett, who's on here every once in a while, he wrote a book about some of the stuff that's out there at Aberdeen Proving Ground. Yep, out there at Aberdeen Proving Grounds.
FJB.
So
His initials.
Blue Tree Sky Star says, I have been wondering and trying to piece together why the spirit world is in upheaval. I think big things are moving in the world. I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's an awful lot of interesting things that have been happening. There's one scene in the original Ghostbusters movie when the two were in the car coming back, and Ernie Hudson said to Aykroyd, you know, have you ever thought about the end of the world? All of these things, you know, the dead are supposed to rise and everything else. And he says, well, you know, have you ever thought about it? Why do you suppose that we have so much upheaval? Why there seems to be so much within the spirit world just suddenly coming to light? You know, maybe there was something to it. Personally, I don't think that's got a darn thing to do with it, to be honest with you. Spirits have been around ever since people have been around. It's just that with today's media, today's technology, it's brought to people's faces all the time now. It's everywhere. It's in films, it's on TV, it's on the radio, you name it. It's there. It's in people's faces at all times. And it's made people more, whether it's made people more aware, or maybe it's just caused people to start doing their own research, you know, looking for answers. But I don't think there's any great amount of spirit world upheaval. I don't think that there's any more hauntings than there were 50 years ago, 100 years ago. I think it all just has to do with people's awareness and their willingness to accept it.
I think a lot of it, you know, way back in the day, it's what goes around comes around. You know, think about it. Years and years ago, people used to talk about it all the time. It was normal, everyday conversation to talk about seeing a spirit in the, you know, early, you know, up until the spiritualism during the Civil War. It wasn't uncommon for people to talk about the skeletons in their closets and all this other stuff. Right. It was normal. And then we all got more educated and all this other stuff, and we turned all that off.
Yeah.
So that's could be what part of it is, you know, we're coming back around to that spiritualism again that we had in the 1860s. So think about it, you know, is it the time? Is it our time? Or is it something else? You know, but you know, when people say what goes around comes around, or hey, it's cyclical, this is too. It's going to get unacceptable again, probably in about 20 years, to talk about ghosts and to be saying that you see spirits. Don't be surprised if it happens again. This may be a trend just for now.
No, it took
Well, it's a
me.
trend because it's in everybody's mind.
Yeah,
Like Kat said, you see it everywhere. YouTube, every social media, news station, everything's coming out, even
hmm
on the
Yeah, but
news.
it used to be like that though.
yeah. Well,
It
when
used to
know,
you,
be, but then everything kind of shut down. And
hmm
then when we was in during the big shutdown during the pandemic, more people were at home watching a lot of YouTube and movies and different things. They opened their eyes up and their minds up to a
yeah,
lot of stuff. They're like, "Oh, this been going on in my house while I was working," you know?
yeah,
but I will tell you one thing. At one point in time, a lot of people thought that those hill people were crazy for talking about all the stuff that they were seeing in, things in the Ozarks and in the, Appalachians. These people were talking about seeing stuff their entire lives, and people thought they
Hmm.
were nuts.
yeah.
So,
Well,
so
that's
I
where
don't
my
know.
people are from. My
Mhm.
my people are from West Virginia, and they grew up with all the folk tales. They grew up, telling stories, and they firmly believed in ghosts. There was no doubt about it. Now, some of my relatives, especially my father, he, as far as he was concerned, if you saw ghosts and talked to ghosts and everything, you're probably a little on the loony side. So I never said anything. And growing up with this ability and seeing ghosts, hearing them, talking to them, it was something I had to keep to myself for so very, very long because it just was not accepted. And
Well,
by the time I was able to let people know that I could do this, then I never called myself a medium. I refused to do that. And that's because as I was growing up, being a medium was the image of the gypsy woman sitting around a round table with a crystal ball and the big, huge hoop earrings and the shawl around her and everything that wanted to read your palms and get the Whoopi Goldberg thing, like in Ghost sort of
Yeah.
thing.
Right.
yeah,
So,
but it also had that charlatan kind of thing,
yes, where
feel to it.
everybody was out there, with the hand for your advertisement outside your building and everything. 90% of the people were just there to bring it a few bucks. They were what I would call mentalists. They read your body language. They read your, whether or not you had certain rings on,
Right.
your facial expressions, and maybe even your answers in order to give you the information you wanted. So they weren't exactly looked at as being the best
The
of,
pillars of society, yeah.
yeah, exactly. So if you told people that you talked to ghosts, they would think of you sitting around the table, rap once for yes and twice for no, sort of thing. So I never said that I was a medium. I called myself a sensitive. And I know now that being a sensitive is just that. You can pick up on the vibrations, you can sense when there's something around, but it's not quite the same thing as what I do and what I've done all my life. And it was probably about 4, 5 years ago, maybe. I was at Gettysburg with a dear friend of mine, Tina Marie Ronan, and we were both picking up on the same spirit near Devil's Den. And she says, Kat, come over here. Come over here. I want you to tell me what you see. And I go over, and there was a soldier apparently injured, and he was laying down on the opposite side of this one creek area, and he was scared of us because he didn't understand how we could see him. And I kept looking and saying, it's okay. It's okay. It's all right. We're not here to blow the whistle on you. We're not here to tell the Union soldiers that you're there. No, that's not for us to do. It's okay. And he kept calling out that he wanted water. And Tina was like, I'm sorry, we can't give you water, but, you know, we'd like to help you. Well, when we had finished this conversation and Tina and I went off to another location, there was somebody else that was there with us. We went to introduce ourselves to him, and, you know, Tina was, well, you know, I'm a medium, psychic medium. I said, well, I'm a sensitive. And Tina looked down at me and she says, you and I are going to have a conversation here. So later on that afternoon, we were back in town and she says, you have got to finally admit that you're a medium. She says, every time you say that you're a sensitive, you are denying yourself. And that's not right. You should be able to just come right out and say, I am a medium. And I had to joke with her because Tina is a rather stout woman and I'm rather small. So I was joking with her and I say, well, okay, Tina, you can call yourself a medium. I'll just call myself a small. And she says, but you're not. You are a medium. And she says, and I want you to stop selling yourself short. I want you to start admitting that you're a medium and introduce yourself as a medium. So there was somebody else, and you know her, Vanessa Hoggle. She told me the same thing. She said, stop doing that. Admit to people who you really are and admit it to yourself. And I'll tell you, those two ladies, they changed a lot for me because they both opened my eyes to the fact that I don't care what labels there are. You see, I'm not wearing big hoop earrings. I've got on a sweatshirt and I've got sweatpants on and I don't wear shawls. When I'm out investigating, I'm wearing comfortable shoes. You know, I can be wearing anything. And I'm now a medium. I can proudly say that I am a medium. And if somebody asks me, well, you know, knock once for yes or twice for no, I'm sorry, but if you're not there, how are you going to knock in the first place? That doesn't make, they never made any sense to me. If you're there, if there's somebody there, rap once for yes and twice for no. But if there's nobody there, you're not going to rap in the first place.
Well, the
Right.
reason people do that is because, you know, they can't see them. They don't know that they're there. You know, so.
But how can you rap if there's nobody there? See, that was my point with people.
They don't know
say
that.
Yeah, and I was like, well, there's nobody here. Oh, well, that's why they're not rap. Exactly. There's nobody here.
So we've got about 5 to 8 minutes left. Where can everybody find you, Kat?
Well, the only place that I'm located at the moment is on Facebook. I'm under Kat Snyder, Gash, Snider, my maiden name, Gash, Gasch. And if you look at my profile, you can see where I've worked and so forth. And you can see some of my paranormal exploits that have been listed there. And also, if you tune into Rock with the Shock on Friday nights, I'm usually in the chat room there. And hopefully in the spring, as I say, I will have my second book out with a different publisher, and you will definitely be getting a copy.
Perfect. I can't wait to read what stories you add because I know that you tell some great stories. So everybody, when that comes out, I will let you guys know. And I will share it. And next week, our guest is going to be Kenneth Torres here on Paranormal Nation Radio, Not So Normal. He is going to come on and he's going to talk about demonology, the occult, all kinds of stuff related to that. So it's going to be another enlightening show. And next Monday on the 22nd on the Paranormal Pride, I'm going to have Kelly Jo Monahan. And so, like I said, I'm trying to get you guys some new blood so you can hear some new stories. And I hope you guys will tune in Monday at 7 p.m. Central for the Paranormal Pride. And next Tuesday at 5 p.m. Central for us here at Paranormal Nation Radio, Not So Normal. Carl, what else do we have going on the network?
Oh, let's see. Tomorrow night we have Verbal Hangover with Tammy Lee on there. And then Friday night, We the People podcast is on there. And hopefully everything is set up for next week. We'll have a call-in line for the show.
Oh,
I've been working on it, getting the bugs worked out and everything on it. So
For which
that's
show is
what's
that?
going on.
This
Huh?
this show?
available for all
All
of them.
shows, all shows
what I
will have a
thought.
call-in line. So say we're doing the live show like we're doing right now, and somebody wanted to call in and ask Kat or ask you or ask me a question, they could call in instead of using a link, because a lot of people don't want their faces up on a live show, but yet they'll call in.
Yeah.
We're going to do it kind of like an old radio station.
Right.
Nice.
Well, I'll let you know when that feature comes to the Paranormal Pride. Sometimes I don't like sharing my guests with the listeners.
Hey,
So we'll let you know.
hey, Kat, were you planning on going to the Gettysburg Bash this year, or do you?
I haven't been to one in probably about 3 years, but I was kind of hoping. Are you guys going to be there?
Yeah,
we're
we're
thinking
thinking
about
about it. We know we're going to know a lot of people there.
Okay. Are you going there as vendors or just to visit?
No,
Just to visit.
we're gonna be strollers because
We're visitors.
we don't
Okay.
like having a table. You don't
I
get to
don't
meet
know why we
anybody that
would.
way.
We wouldn't.
We have nothing
Okay.
to sell.
Well,
Unless-
definitely let me know. I'll be up there, and I'm only 40 minutes away. I'll be right up there.
Well, the only thing I'd have to sell is kisses, and I don't think anybody really wants those.
She doesn't kiss much. So.
Well, thank you guys very much for having me this evening. I really enjoyed it. Thank you
Oh,
so
thank
much.
you.
Thank you so
Oh,
much
we've
for
had
coming
fun
on. We
with you,
love your
Kat.
stories.
Okay.
Yes.
You all
Very
take care.
informative. Okay. Have a good evening.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. So
Uh,
I want to thank all the people on Rumble. We've had up to 15 people watching us over on Rumble tonight. Rumble's turning out real good for us over there. All the people in Facebook land over here, and especially to Things Network for allowing us to go live over there, the Temple of Phoenix Rising Entertainment Facebook page, and Japan Paranormal. So we're live around the world on all these pages and everything. So everybody take care, and we will see you next Tuesday night here on Paranormal Nation Radio. Not so normal. Have a good evening.
Stay warm,
Stay
everybody.
warm.
Yeah, stay warm.